Hello there, world of tankers. I'm Noodles Blitz. Hello there, world of tankers. Welcome back to another one of my videos. I'm Noodles Blitz, and today I'm going to be talking about the brand new tech tree. Now, this, of course, came out last night in update 6.9, and it brought in the addition of 4 new tank destroyers, being a Tier 7, Tier 8, Tier 9, and Tier 10. Now, in this video today, I'm going to be talking specifically about the Tier 10, which is the Hori. It's actually a pretty solid tank. I'm going to be telling you everything you do need to know about it, with its statistics, how it plays in the battlefield, how to take it out if you do go up against one, and of course, whether or not you should be spending some of your hard-earned time to grind down this line. So make sure you do stay tuned, and I'm going to be telling you everything you do need to know. When looking at the stats of this tank, the first thing you'll see is the damage per minute of 3,300, which is actually a pretty solid number, judging that this tank can deal 560 damage per shot. And when you combine that with the 310 millimeters of standard penetration, that makes it a very effective tank on pretty much penetrating anything you need to. And if that's not enough, you load the premium ammo and you're going to go all the way up to 380. And not to mention, a lot of people don't know this, but the premium ammo only loses 15 average damage compared to the standard ammo. So you're only losing about 90 damage per minute when you load in the premium, which pretty much makes this tank a no-loss vehicle. If, let's say, you're going up against a mouse and, your standard ammo can't go through the upper plate of his tank because he's side-scraping or something, the premium ammo on this tank can literally penetrate the upper plate of a mouse. That's just how impressive it is. And as well, the high explosive is not the most impressive. I wish it did a little bit more damage, maybe like 700, but it has 85 millimeters of penetration, and it can do 640 damage, pretty much making it like a 152. Moving on to the gun handling of this tank, with an aiming time of 1.9 seconds, and pair that with the dispersion value of 0.308, you're really not going to be missing much with this tank. And as well, the dispersion factors while moving or even after shot are #1 out of every Tier 10 tank destroyer in the game. And you can see here on Dead Rail, I am constantly turning the tank, looking all around, and the gun barely disperses. And because of that, it's honestly one of the most accurate guns I've ever shot, and it's crazy that it can deal 560 damage. There's only one thing that I really dislike about the gun on this tank, and that is the shell velocity of 757, which is actually the slowest out of every single Tier 10 tank destroyer in the game, which is not super fun when you're trying to shoot at people across the map. I remember I was playing another game on Dead Rail, actually, and I was shooting at people across on the medium side from the spot I'm at currently. And it would take literally 2 seconds, I would count, for the shell to reach the enemy. And when people are moving and shooting at mediums, that is not an easy shot. So running supercharge on this tank might not be a bad trade-off instead of having that aiming time. Because the gun is so long and this tank is so boxy, it does not have much room for gun depression at 6 degrees. And as well, the elevation of 14 degrees is not what I would call super impressive either. So it is not very flexible when you're on pretty much any rough terrain. And that's one thing you do have to keep in mind, is that if you get stuck out in the open, you are going to struggle in this tank greatly. Moving on to the mobility of this tank, it can reach a top speed of 50 kilometers per hour. However, you really won't be reaching it that often because the power-to-weight ratio of this tank is 12.90. But it does weigh 60.4 tons, which means that if you can get this tank up to a speed like 40-50 kilometers per hour, and you hit a light tank or one of the medium tanks that don't weigh a crazy amount like an E50M, you're going to be taking 400, 500 hit points off them easy, not taking much damage in return. So that is one really nice thing about the tank. As well, it can go reverse at 20 kilometers per hour, making it the quickest reverse Tier 10 tank destroyer in the game. And that is something that is extremely important, especially when you don't have a turret. Because if I want to shoot somebody, let's say I'm on desert sands and I'm pulling around a building to shoot someone, it's not like I'm just pulling out, turning my turret and shooting at them. I have to pull out, drive the whole vehicle around the wall, shoot them, and then back up and turn it back behind it. And that's one thing that a lot of tank destroyers struggle in, especially a tank like the Badger, where I'll pull out and they'll track me, and that'll be the end of me because I'll be out of repair kits, and then they'll just keep shooting you in the track and you can't hit them. So this tank is very quick at getting out of tricky situations, backing down hills when people are aiming at it, and that's one really nice thing. And as well, the traverse speed of it is top in the class at 36.45 degrees a second, so you should easily be able to turn the tank, stop most medium tanks from flanking you. A Sheridan still will get the side of you, the same for a Bat Jet, so be a little bit wary to some of the faster medium tanks and lights like a Leopard. But in general, as long as you see them coming at you, you should be able to get into cover pretty easily. When looking at the armor of this vehicle, you can see it is definitely not the thickest. And while, of course, 250 millimeters is a good solid amount of armor, but when you're at tier 10, 250 millimeters is pretty much the base amount of pen that every tier 10 vehicle really gets. Even most of the mediums have around 240, 250 millimeters of penetration, and every single premium round is easily going to be penning this tank, especially because it doesn't have a gun mallet. It's literally just a gun and then this box that rotates around it. So because of that, it's very easy to penetrate this tank because it's just such a big target. As well, this part here, an easy penetration, only 250 millimeters again, and the lower plate's only 170. So that is the weakest part of the tank, so if you can't pen anywhere else, aim for the lower plate. The cheeks, though, I would definitely not suggest to shoot at, even with premium ammo, because 330 millimeters is definitely not a good amount. Even when this tank uses its gun depression, though, you can see that that upper plate is still only 250, and that's because it's just such a flat tank. You can literally see it's perfectly flat. So because of that, even when you use your gun depression on this tank, it really does not get much armor. The other weakness I found with this tank is the super wafer-thin sides. You can see barely even angling this tank, that's only 161 millimeters through the front track. And what I've noticed is I'll try to wiggle this tank back and forth to bounce shells, and what I'll actually do is I'll wiggle it just like this, and what's going to happen is people are easily just going to overmatch the side armor of this tank. In fact, if you are running a 152, I'm pretty sure you can actually overmatch the entire side armor of this tank very easily. Not the upper part, but right by the tracks, you can shoot right through them pretty much at any angle this tank's sitting at, unless it's not directly aiming at you. And you can see the side armor is not thick. 92 millimeters means that any Hesh rounds are easily going to pen the side of this tank, and any 152 millimeter or larger is going to be able to shoot HE at the side. And as well, the rear is not what I would call thick either. At 60 millimeters, that means now pretty much every 122 is easily going to be shooting high explosive in the rear of this tank. So it is definitely not the thickest on the armor. And I learned myself that this tank does not have a great amount of armor because I was playing this tank when I first got it really aggressively, because that's what I sort of expected it to be like, an aggressive tank destroyer where you could sort of run it like a 263 and brawl with the heavies. And I thought, well, that's what this tank was going to be like. So I pulled it out, and my first game was on Himmelsdorf, and I was up against a bunch of heavies, E100s, and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, I'm hiding the lower plate because this tank is so tall I can shoot over the berms and stuff. And I was doing that, and then the E100 just went right through my superstructure. I'm like, well, he didn't shoot heat. And then it happened again. I'm like, are you shooting heat? He's like, nope. So I'm like, okay, so the superstructure of this tank is not very well armored. Looked on Armor Inspector, and yeah, it is not the thickest. So you definitely do not want to be super aggressive in this tank, because as you saw also, the side armor is very, very weak. And this tank is huge, and you can imagine what happens if you be a little too aggressive in this tank and push it out too far against mediums, or there's a tank that gets behind you. Every shell is going to pen you, and there's nothing you can really do about it. So you don't want to get stuck out in the open, because the camouflage rating on this tank is not spectacular. And if you get stuck out in the open, you are going to be punished and probably killed very, very quickly. So my advice for this tank is you want to run it like a tank destroyer at the beginning of the game. As you saw in Dead Rail, I pushed it up on the tank destroyer spot, I pretty much sat there for the whole game, and then I was aggressive at the end. And that's what you want to do in this tank. You want to sit at the back of the map, because believe it or not, this tank has a 33% camouflage rating. Even though it is the size of the Great Wall of China, it for some reason has an excellent camouflage rating. So you can sit at the back of the map and not really worry about being detected unless you're flanked, and hit really accurate shots off because this gun is so accurate. And then if you notice, hey, my mediums need help, my heavy tanks need help, you're quick enough, you go 50 kilometers per hour, you can get there, help your team out, and do what needs to get done. So save your hit points till the end of the game, because that's when you really need them. Because if you lose them all at the beginning, you're really going to regret it when that one medium gets behind you and just pens you really easily right through the track. On to the big question, though, is this line worth going for, or should you just keep your tanks as it is? Personally, I actually really like this line, and not only do I love the tier 10, which is now my highest average damage tank at 3,800 out of like 30 games in the tank, which is absolutely ridiculous. I'm not sure if that's because they added hit points to all the tier 10 heavy tanks now. That could just be why I get that little extra buff in my average damage per game, but currently this tank is smoking all of my other vehicles, and because of that, I'm really enjoying it. It's quick, it can really easily reposition, it's got a nasty gun, and it's very fun to play. And as well, the tier 9 is a very solid tank as well. In fact, I think the tier 9 is stronger tier for tier than the tier 10. And the tier 8 as well has almost 3,000 damage per minute. So the entire line is a very solid line, and I would definitely suggest to start grinding down this because you will not regret it. And I'm actually very surprised that I am saying to grind this tank, because when I saw it 2-3 months ago in super testing, I was like, this is the ugliest tank in the game. It looks like a 2-year-old built it. It's not doing too well in super testing. It doesn't look that fun. And there's really nobody that's going to be interested in grinding this line. But they released the tank, and I am surprised myself that I am saying to grind this tank because it actually is really fun. And something good about this tank is that it's so unique. It's pretty much different than every other vehicle at tier 10, and that's something that I really like, because the Chieftain Mark 6 and the T95E6, if you own either of them, there's no point to get the other one because they're pretty much exactly the same tank, just different nations. When you're talking about this tank, it plays nothing like any other tank destroyer I've ever ran. It has no alpha that's the same as any other tank destroyer at tier 10. It plays differently, it's quick, it's got a weird armor profile, and because of that, it's actually a very different playstyle, and because of that, it brings new challenges, and that's something that I want in Blitz, because as I've said before, I get bored of this game after a while because all the tanks are the same for me, and I find it actually pleasing that Wargaming added something that is a little different and a little bit more challenging when I first start off to play this tank. This is going to be the end of this video. I hope you guys did enjoy this little tech tree review. I'm going to be doing the tier 9 and hopefully the tier 8 very, very soon, maybe tomorrow. But I'm going to be doing the rest as well, so let me know what you thought of this in the comments down below if you want me to do more videos like this on other tech tree tanks as well. As always, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already and you've stuck to this far in the video. I hope you would subscribe. Other than that, make sure to hit that like button down below. Unless you didn't like this video, then hit that downvote button and tell me why I suck. But other than that, guys, I hope you did enjoy it, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe.